All right, welcome to the broadcast. If you are wondering what are the top 5 red flags in an inspection on an Austin home, we're going to cover that and more today in today's broadcast. Welcome to Behind the Scenes with Spyglass Realty with Ryan Rodenbeck and Matt Edwards. Okay, I'm back. I am Ryan Rodenbeck, broker of Spyglass Realty, and this is Matt Edwards, my associate and co-host of today's broadcast. We're going to go into the top 5 mistakes that buyers make on an Austin. The top 5 red flags. That was last week's show. Top 5 red flags that you will find in an inspection on an Austin home. But first, if you are watching this on Facebook, go ahead and if you want to see future broadcasts, type the word agent in the comment section below. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and be sure to comment if you have any questions. Let's talk about what's going on in the news today, Matt. What do you have?
So before that, you guys got to stay tuned because we have a special guest joining us shortly.
That's right.
And you don't want to miss it.
Yeah.
So
we've got Chris Nowling, who is part of the family, right?
He is. He's my uncle. He's been an inspector here in Austin for 24 years? 29 years. I'm sorry. Wow.
We've got Owen Himsmat. High five. Is that how you do it, Owen? Yeah.
Anyways, before we get off on a tangent, let's get into the news today. And just recently, they announced ABJ, the airport, has some massive expansion plans.
Yeah.
So they're getting ready to be finished with the newest expansion, which is going to take their passengers per year capacity from 11 to 15 million.
Right.
And that'll be done here in the next few months. And then their 2040 plan is to double that.
Yeah, and I had read, I think it was somewhere a few months ago, that like even with the new wing, that we're almost at capacity. You know, I mean, like it doesn't add all that many direct like, first of all, we filled direct flights over the last several years,
right.
But with the new wing, like they're not even catching up as fast as they need to. So it's nice that they're actually heading this way.
Yeah, they're behind.
They are behind, but we do have a lot of great direct flights. When I moved here 20 years ago, you had to go through Houston or Dallas for anywhere you wanted to go.
Yeah, they just added a new nonstop to Europe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't see the destination.
Yeah.
But I think that's the 3rd or 4th this year.
Yeah.
Nonstop.
Yeah,
so.
There was one to London, and I remember thinking, being kind of cheap ass at some point, like you could drive to Dallas and save $400 flying to England than taking a direct flight from Austin. So, yeah, cool.
Looking for that. But yeah, so more construction at the airport.
Yeah.
For the next 22 years.
Cool. So, okay, before we jump into our meat of our broadcast today, I want to remind you, last week we did a show, or was it, last week we did the top 5 mistakes that buyers make. Kelly, we put a link into that. And then 2 weeks before, we did how to buy, renovate, and cash flow duplexes. So if you have interest in any of the ebooks that we've written on these 2 subjects, you can download our duplex buyer guide, and you can go to austinduplexagent.com and you can get information on a guided step-by-step process into buying homes by going to austinrealestateagents.org. These sites are getting hard to keep up with.
I know.
But, all right, so let's join. We've got Chris here. Come on in.
All right, can we all fit? There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah.
So I have a list that I put together, and my list was, I haven't seen your list. I think you may have seen mine. They're probably the same thing, right?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Now, before we get started, how many inspections have you completed, roundabout over the 29 years?
Somewhere in the range of about 12,000.
12,000.
Yep.
So you might know what you're talking about.
I'm hoping I'm figuring it out. Like I tell people, I appreciate the opportunity to practice again every day.
Yeah.
I'm going to get good eventually.
So there you go, 12,000 home inspections.
Wow.
That's a lot. So you might want to listen to what he has to say.
So before we get into this, I want to ask you, what is the weirdest thing you've ever seen? What's the craziest story you've ever seen in an inspection? And that could be anything.
That's such a challenge.
I know.
Things that I see out there. Gosh, I really don't have a good one for you right off the top of my head.
What's a good recent one in the last 2 years, 3 years?
I've had so many nightmare homes lately, it's hard to say. We've got, one of the good things is getting on the roofs to find people using things like coffee cans for flashing, for plumbing vents.
I had an inspector tell me that he went into an attic one time and found a whole, a whole heap of weed in the attic.
Oh,
and it was a rental property, like enough to where, and this is 10 years ago, like enough to where the owner could have been freaked out about repossessing the property.
Well, you would say that, and since you bring that up, I actually did have one experience in one where we went to where it was fairly obvious by the time we were done that they had a grow room in the entire attic.
Oh, wow.
Of a 3,800 square foot house that they had disassembled.
Oh,
I've
actually seen that too.
Now, what's the legality on that? Per you, do you just...
Well, that's a disassembled one, so, right?
Yeah, that was disassembled.
Well, like if you came across one or like a couple pounds, I mean, you just keep on moving and...
that's not why I'm there.
Tell the owner and leave it alone, right?
I'm not going there.
There you go.
Okay, so, and do you agree with these as the top 5 red flags?
Oh, those are definitely some great ones. I mean, when you talk about red flags, we can make a really long list.
Sure.
But absolutely. That's a pretty common one. If we're going to talk about things that homeowners can see or potential buyers can see when they're looking, this is a pretty good list of things they can visually see.
Right, and you're right. We can go through a whole bunch of them, but like when I'm thinking of red flags, I'm thinking of like your immediate potential deal killers and the most common one. So number 1 is stress cracks in the foundation. I'm going to let you take this from here and tell me what is your take on this, and what do people need to look for?
Well, what we're looking for, I mean, there are a lot of causes for cracks in sheetrock inside a home. They can be from foundation movement and activity, which is problematic. Others can be from simple shrinkage.
Yeah.
Or they could be from a moisture condition that had developed in the house at some point in time that may have gone away.
Or normal settlement, too.
Well, normal settlement, that's always a term that the engineers steer far away from.
Yeah.
Because there's not a real definition for normal to call that. So what I tend really try to people to understand when they're looking at cracks in drywall in homes, completely vertical or horizontal cracks that are straight lines, those are more likely to be from shrinkage of the materials, minor activity, not much to speak of. It's the diagonal cracks that you're looking for. Because when you see the diagonal cracks, then you're breaking sheetrock.
Coming off the door hinges.
Coming off the doors, coming off the windows, either above or below. But then you know you're breaking sheetrock. That's more of a significant activity because it took some force to crack and damage the sheetrock.
Yeah.
And what's a typical age of home? You know, whether it's 10 years old, 15. I know that varies depending on what time. Yeah, but you know,
it does vary. It varies dramatically. People are quite confused about how long it takes for a home to not be active or in an active area. We have a lot of expansive soils here in Austin, so it's something that you've got to focus on. You may see activity as early as a year in. Those are going to be some of the worst, but some of the ones that we're really starting to see show up now are in some of the areas with the expansive soils where over time maintenance has not been maintained. One of the most critical things in these high movement soils is drainage.
Drainage. And so you bring that up, and it's like, so say I purchased a home that was 10 years old. What should I not do to, like, whether it's a flower bed or anything like that on the side of the house, to try to, keep the drainage flow as natural as possible and not cause, the foundation to crack or have issues ahead of time?
Well, if you're in one of the expansive soil areas, you want to pay attention to that drainage period. You want to know that the water has an opportunity to move reasonably rapidly away from the house in all directions, not just in one side. One of the problems we have with homeowners is periodically they'll do things like build raised flower beds up against a house, not understanding that what they just created was a pond next to the house when the rains come.
Yeah.
And the rest of the house doesn't have that. So after a long dry period, the soil is dried out over weeks and months. Now I have an area when the rains come, the soil gets resaturated rapidly, but in this particular case I have a pond in the front, so that area, the soil is swelling at a faster rate than other areas around the house, what we call uneven watering. And that's what provides opportunity for stress on the foundation that can actually turn into damage.
Yeah, I have a duplex one particular duplex that like this would be the top of the foundation, and we've got dirt, like this, so that when the water comes, it goes down. But like every 2 years, we have to, the way the flow of the water would go. Every 2 years, we have to like bring dirt and like put it back up. Otherwise, it'll kind of pool in that little area there.
Yeah.
And then when Chris is talking about the diagonal diagonal stress cracks, this is a pretty big telltale sign. That doesn't mean necessarily you're going to have foundation problems, or you do have foundation problems. It means you need to look into it further.
Absolutely.
So what he's talking about, this is a window. Okay, let me see it right there. And then, so, you'll see a lot of the stress cracks that go like straight up. Those are the ones that aren't that alarming. The ones that are more alarming are the ones that go like this. So it could be like on a window or a door. Am I explaining that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, number 2, check the age of the air conditioner and furnace, because these are big ticket items that can cost money, right?
Yeah, and they're going to be replaced.
Yeah.
I mean, from the day they go in service, deterioration starts.
Mm-hmm.
The day will come. So yes, it is important to know the age. A lot of the manufacturers have gotten pretty friendly, whereas you can look actually at the equipment and look at the rate plate and actually get a year date.
Yeah.
However, that's not true for everybody. A lot of them conceal it within their serial number, which, good news with technology is such that it is, you can usually go online and look it up pretty quickly, and you'll get the age and the sizing of the equipment out of it.
Now I know, with a lot of the newer furnaces that are getting put in some like new construction home, what's the anticipated lifespan of those?
Well, they're going to vary on type. What that means is in your homes where we have natural gas, you're typically going to have a gas furnace and a standard air conditioning system. In that scenario, the air conditioners, the industry average life is 15 years. Whereas the gas furnace is going to be 20 to 25.
Okay.
But one of the more common ones we see in this region, because they're more energy efficient, are heat pumps, which is all electric. We have no gas available. The heat pumps have a bit of a shorter life expectancy because the equipment runs year round. With your other system in the winter, your air conditioner is doing nothing. But with a heat pump, that equipment runs year round, so the likelihood of failure or breakdown is higher.
Okay.
And so their average life expectancy is about 10 to 12 years in our region.
So let me ask you this. I've seen people take these old furnaces, gas furnaces, and try to breathe new life into them. And what are they doing? They're taking the guts out and like replacing the evaporator coil. Is that in the furnace?
That's the air conditioner.
That's the condenser.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're just breathing a couple more years into it, right?
You are. And the city actually tried to clean up a little bit of that. What they're referring to is where the system would break down. You have two primary components. We have split systems in this region. So the outdoor unit is called the condensing unit. The inside that you're referring to is the evaporator coil.
Gotcha.
The evaporator coil has no moving parts. It is literally just a coil that the refrigerant is pushed through. So it typically lasts much longer than the outdoor unit. So what we would experience is people would have a breakdown and they would simply come and replace the outdoor condensing unit.
Yeah.
To keep because then it all worked and it cooled. The downside of that was you didn't pick up the energy efficiency rating that you were hoping when you replaced your unit, because you now don't have a matched system.
So I want to ask you about that too, because we get a lot of those inspection reports, and that there was a time where they changed the Freon. Is that right?
Yeah, we would change the refrigerant from R22 to R410.
Okay, so and is it you cannot get 410 anymore?
No, it's the 22 that they've tried to get rid of.
Okay.
And they can still get it.
Yeah.
They can absolutely still get it. They're going to charge you an absolute premium for it.
Yeah.
But you can still get it. But, the premium price is to try to encourage you to quit using it.
Right, and I think
to move on.
And I think at the time when did they switch over? Like 2010 or?
No, actually the R410 has been out since probably around 2001. It's been around quite a while.
So
it became more of an issue around 2006 when the city really pushed
Gotcha.
to say we need to stop doing this mismatching of equipment.
Yeah.
We want them matched up. We want this R22 gone.
Yeah, and I think the issue kind of was that at the time was that they thought that the R22, that's the old one.
Yeah.
That was no longer ever going to be like, there was a lot of kind of scare tactics and that like, okay, you're not even able, I remember buyer's agents would send me stuff and say, There at the time, 2006, and up to like 2012, they had a 6-year-old, air conditioning system, and they're like, well, they're not going to sell that next year, so you got to have your seller replace this.
Yeah.
When in reality, I mean, it's probably starting to happen at some point, but I think that was one of these little scare tactics that buyers agents use to try and get money off of off the sales price, and that's why these things. That's why we're covering these things. By the way, just a little pause here. If you're just joining in, you want to subscribe for future broadcasts, type the word agent. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions, put it in there, and we will get right to them. And let's go to, what are we at? Number 3.
Number 3.
That is the electric panel, right?
Yeah.
FPE, Federal Pacific Electric.
Yeah. That happens to be a manufacturer that was around for many decades.
Mm-hmm.
They've changed over time. Specifically, we're talking about the Federal Pacific electric panel, the stab lock version. That's not all of their panels. Previous to the stab lock version, they have older units.
Yeah.
Those started, generally, you're going to see them from around the 60s all the way up till the end of the 1980s in place. The issue they've had with them is that the breakers weren't tripping when they were supposed to. And of course, the purpose of a breaker in an electrical system is to protect the system from a fire.
Yeah.
To keep the wire from overheating, it's going to shut down before it can overheat. So if you've got breakers that aren't tripping, that's a huge problem.
Sure.
The downside is that while they have flagged Federal Pacific with this issue, it's not exclusive to them. They're just the ones that have been hung up.
There's a couple others,
Yeah,
right?
they've actually been in litigation over their product since the early 1980s, and the last I'd heard, they still are.
Yeah.
They've tried to remanufacture their breakers to put them in, and they keep failing. And the downside is that when you talk to the engineers and say, how do I know if I have a bad breaker? They say, well, if the house burns, you'll know.
Yeah, right.
Because otherwise you have to take them to be tested. Once they've been tested, you can't put them back in, which means then you have to put a new one back in that hasn't been tested.
Yeah.
So it's just a circle that never ends. So the simple solution is replace the panel.
Right. And so I have a position on this. It's funny, like I've been in real estate for, 14 years now, and I find things that my position has changed on. And the reason I have a position on it that's changed is I had a house in Travis Country that I bought in, I sold it in 2011. So I owned that home for 8 years, and it had an FPE panel. And, a lot of homes in this area have FPE panels. And, my inspector at the time did not think it was that big of a deal, right?
That's part of the challenge.
Yeah.
I've got good friends who are master electricians. Like, more problems with this and other manufacturers. Anecdotally, they're not seeing it.
Yeah.
But here's where we are.
Well, and here's why my position has changed on it is because when I bought that house in 2003, and beside my nightstand, I plugged in one thing. Now I have like 7 things plugged in, right? I mean, we're using more devices. So it stands to reason that, the more electricity we consume, the more devices we charge, the more that this can be more of an issue, right?
Oh, yeah, it provides more opportunity.
And from my experience, it's about, $2,500 to replace one of these. You can get it done for less. You can get it done for more, but that's what we've done. And then aluminum wiring. My house in Barton Hills has aluminum wiring.
Right, aluminum wiring. A common beast, as I tell people, think of Vietnam War era. It was primarily used from 67 to 76. You'll find it as far back as 65. But at that point, copper was expensive.
Yeah.
It was being used for other things. So they went to using quite a bit of aluminum. At the time, aluminum is a fabulous conductor of electricity. It has no problem conducting electricity. But they were used to using stranded aluminum. Now that we're looking for branch circuits with single strand wires.
Yeah.
The aluminum experiences a much greater expansion and contraction component when it functions as it goes through service.
Yeah.
That process can result in loose connections. If it was over tightened originally, it could end up in broken wires. At the end of the day, you're having overheating on the wiring, which again, now we're concerned with a fire.
Yeah.
And then you have an FPE panel, so now you're really concerned.
But here's the issue, right? And like this is in my opinion, unqualified, admittedly, and from everything I've heard, that it's an easy fix. It's crimping or pigtailing.
Well, okay. if you actually look at the Consumer Protection Commission's study on that and what their recommendations are, there really aren't very many options that they consider proper and satisfactory. And primarily it's the crimping.
Yeah.
Pigtailing, no one is a fan of.
Yeah.
As far as the engineers.
Oh, I thought they were the same thing.
They're not the same thing. Well,
okay.
No, it could be. Crimping is a crimp device. It's a coampulum connector is what they call it. I know that's a kind of a long word to put out there for it, but basically it is a device. It's a connector that takes the two wires and they go in separate from each other, and then they use a crimping tool to secure them. So the copper and the aluminum are never in contact.
So they're not So they're not heated right there.
Right. When you talk about pigtailing was a term where the guys would use wire nuts to add a piece of aluminum onto or add a piece of copper onto the end of the aluminum.
Okay, got you. Okay.
They have come out in actually it's been quite a few years back with a wire nut that they proclaimed is rated for it. However, it's still not a fan of the engineers, and the Consumer Protection Agency still doesn't like them.
Gotcha. But before we started crimping, let me see how many homes with aluminum wiring did I know that have burned down. 0.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now that we're crimping everything, it's still 0. I mean, look, I'm sure it's happened. I'm just saying my own experience, right?
Yeah.
I just want to let people know that, like, you know, this is an issue that, you have to deal with. If you're a seller, you have to deal with it. If you're a buyer, you have to deal with it. In reality, it's not seen very often at all.
Well, interestingly, what I see when I go into these houses, especially ones that haven't had any updating on them since it was built, is it actually seems that the electricians at that time were being more careful with the installation of the product.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I know I've had overheating circuits. I've found overheated wiring in those panels in the past, but I've never heard of a house burning down personally.
Yeah.
I know they have. But at the end of the day, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I think the point is it's still, I'm just trying to ease people's minds that if you have a house that you're buying with aluminum wiring, okay, and you should ask for a concession if you didn't get a good deal on it to begin with. You should ask for a concession on that, and you should get it fixed. But it's not one of those things that you should avoid the home for, because there's a lot of great homes out there.
Oh, absolutely, they are. They're very good homes with them. And one of the things what I was going to say is the challenge that we've had actually is in the upgrades, because we've had a lot of handymen and other people who go out and do them who don't know the protocol between an upgrade for an aluminum wiring system, and they create a problem.
Sure.
Ones that didn't have a problem, now they have a problem because they've been upgraded.
Yeah.
That's not where we want to see it. You really need to use good, qualified electricians that know how to do it, and there are only a very few companies that actually have that crimping device that the Consumer Protection Agency wants to use it.
Yeah.
And that's because the manufacturers of the splices, they only lease the crimping tool. They can't buy the crimping tool.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to use those companies, then you're going to end up with something that's less than what the Consumer Protection Agency wants to see used out there.
Yeah.
So when a home buyer is walking a potential home, how can they tell if the home has aluminum wiring?
On a typical walkthrough, they're not going to. You can really only base it off the given years that the house was built, and say that I'm suspicious of it.
Which was 1967 to 1976.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and somewhere in the around 72, they started coming out with a new one called copper-clad aluminum, which was aluminum wiring that had a copper coating.
Okay. All right, moving along. Roof repairs. So this is something that I'm pretty good with this stuff, right? But I can tell you when it comes to the roofs, I've identified roofs that are like, oh, that's a good roof, and the inspector came back and said, no, it's not. And I've identified roofs like, that roof is shot, and the inspector came back, it's actually good.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, as long as I've done this. From the ground, what you see of the roof shingles, especially if you're talking about a composition shingle roof, it's very deceptive. You really can't tell from the ground what's going on. You really need to be on top of it, looking down at it to see it. So I frequently will go around house. I do my perimeter, and then as I'm looking up, I'm thinking, oh, the roof looks pretty good. And you get on the roof, and you're like, whoa, not so good.
It's the granules,
It's the granules. It's the granule loss. Keeping in mind, when we talk about composition shingles, which is the majority of our region, you're talking about a product on a home that's like the tires on your car.
Yeah.
From the day you install them, deterioration begins. Replacement is imminent.
Yeah.
We need to know where we are in there. How much tread do I have left?
Yeah.
And then identify where there are leaks. And of course, then you have the other flip issue to that. Well, we as inspectors are out there to inspect for function. You have to deal with the other side of that, and that's the insurance carriers.
Yeah.
Insurability and functionality do not carry the same definition.
No, and I got a story I want to tell you about that. All right, so I bought a home in 2006. Okay, and I was we had a hail damage. This is a home that was in Millwood, and I got the hail claim. I got like $11,000 at the time. I didn't have. I think it was $12,000. I think it was a lot of money for that. I don't know. They overpaid me, I think, But I was looking for investors to go in with that would buy the home. I would go in with my half of the repairs, and we'd flip homes. And I started with that $12,000, right? Yeah.
Or they changed the system on you.
Yeah, that was 2006. Okay, now because of that, like I literally have 6 duplexes, 2 houses with the same investor. I still have the home.
That was a very profitable hailstorm.
I never fixed the roof. The tenants still live
down
there.
that road many times.
So
where you find the hail damage and they find out later, well, they already got paid to get it replaced.
Well, yeah, right. Now, I guess my point is, when I sell this home, it's going to have to be replaced. But you just made the point of like functionality and what did you say? Functionality and
insurability.
Insurability. There you go.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So,
if you were to sell it right now, an insurance carrier would say, well, wait, I can't insure this house. That roof has got hail damage.
Right. I need to pony
that's
up.
pre-existing. We can't touch that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges that we run into when we inspect the roofs. We may see a house that has very minor dings and dents in it from the hail that we need to make our buyer aware of that.
Yeah.
But it's still completely functional. It doesn't really have a functional issue. But an insurance carrier is looking at a new buyer and going, that's pre-existing damage. We don't want to play with that. We need a new roof.
Mm-hmm. So one big question I have is 20 years for composite lifespan usually, and then or is it 25?
Well, it depends on the product.
Yeah.
Your typical 3-tab, which is the most common one, the manufacturers call it a 20-year shingle. In our region, generally, if we see 15 to 17 years out of it, we're thrilled. Keep in mind when they give you like a 20-year life expectancy, they're basing that off the center of the country.
Yeah.
Okay, so not down here.
Yeah.
And then how does that compare to the metal roofs?
Well, metal roofs, very fine product, and the market has really expanded in metal roofing in the last decade.
Yeah,
to where you have so many options out there, from lower end, not terribly expensive, always more expensive if done properly than a composition shingle roof,
right.
To extremely high end that are lifetime roofs. Once they're on, we're done here. We're not coming back. Let the hail hit it. I got a few dings. It didn't affect the product.
Yeah. Well. And the funny thing is, you talk about insurability, and this is what is so important about an inspection, because I've had this happen before, okay? And this is why you guys have to be so critical about a roof. Yeah. Because I have had it happen where an inspector went on the roof and said, the roof, it's got some age on it, but it'll be okay.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
Property closes. Insurance sends out their guy, right?
Yes.
And they say, we're excluding insurance from the roof until you replace the roof. The client came back to me and was like, why didn't the inspector catch that?
Exactly, and that's one of the biggest issues.
Yeah.
Because it had nothing to do with function.
No.
That's why you'll see me on my reports, any evidence of it, I'm gonna write it up. I'm gonna let my client know, look, I don't think the roof needs any work or replacement, but you need to move forward and figure this out. You need the seller's insurance company to come and take a look and write a letter.
That's right.
Because most insurance companies, they're not gonna send somebody out to look at that house for a buyer until they own the house.
Right.
Because they're not wanting to step on the toes of the insurance company that's covering the house for the seller.
Yeah. Now I've seen they've started doing it lately a little bit.
I keep pushing for that.
Yeah.
Because I keep getting those calls. So I wish they would move to that, because it's ridiculous that they let them close, give them all the paperwork to say they're fully insured, and then send them a letter, because most of them have a 30, 60, or 90-day out clause to come and check their new property that they've insured.
Yeah.
So the point is, if your inspector tells you that your insurance, your roof is fine, but it's not insurable, you need to know that your insurance may cut your insurance. So it's a pretty big red flag, even if the roof's fine for another 10 or 15 years, as it was in my case. Okay. This is my favorite.
Number 5.
Number 5.
Yes.
Cast iron plumbing.
Yes,
which is
the new beast that's rearing its head. Cast iron drains. That was the premier product for drains up until 1965. Okay, 65 is when the PVC pipes for drains really started coming into the market. So as a result, what you have is that the majority of the homes built, the lower end homes, the middle class and lower end homes, they're going to have PVC typically from 65 forward.
okay.
It's going to be the upper end ones where you're going to see them continuing to use it up until about 80 or 70 to 72. Because they weren't going to use that cheap plastic stuff.
Yeah.
Good, conscientious home builders who wanted to do the right thing, which is understandable.
Yeah.
They weren't going to use the cheap product. What they hadn't yet realized was what was happening with the slab foundations that we were all starting to use now. Cast iron drains came into being when we were building primarily all pier and beam homes.
Yeah.
When the slab home came in, that was a whole new phenomenon because now I got these cast iron drains under a concrete slab. Well, this is a product that is going to fail.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of if it'll fail. It's going to fail.
Yeah.
And the average life of it is 50 years in the horizontal sections under the slabs. Well, fast forward, 1960 forward is when most everything built in Austin is a slab.
Yeah.
So those homes are at risk. Those drains are failing. They're having to be replaced, and they're very expensive and difficult to replace.
It's 20,000 plus, isn't it?
Well, I tell people you got two different types. It depends. You got two different types of plumbers you're going to deal with: expensive and oh my goodness, I didn't know it could be that expensive.
Yeah.
The expensive guy, he's going to come in here and jackhammer up your floors. He's going to replace the drains. He's going to walk out and say, "There you go, good luck," and you get to fix the floors and take care of all that. He'll charge you less. The other guy, he's going to come in and tunnel under the foundation. He's going to have to hire an engineer to approve the tunnels before the guys can even work in the tunnels, and then they're going to have to replace them from underneath the slab. It's very laborious.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work and a lot of time, and you can easily take a 1,500 to 2,000 square foot house and spend $25,000 to $30,000 replacing the drains.
Yeah. I've done no less than 10 of these. Got a lot of experience with it. What I have found, and you're right, with like the older we get, the more prevalent it is. But what I found is that if I find a house today with cast iron plumbing and we do a static test, there's about a 30 to 40% chance that there's a crack in it.
Well, there's a crack in it, or it's leaking at a fitting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other problem we have with cast iron drains, because they're hub and spigot fittings that are it's not a tight fused fitting like a PVC pipe. So the slightest foundation movement, that fitting's leaking.
Well,
it may have been leaking in the first year the house was built.
Well, let's play this. There's a 30-40% chance it's going to fail a static test.
Yeah.
You know? And then you could still make the case. I mean, like, 10 years ago when I started doing this, you could still make the case. It was easier to make the case, like, it's not leaking, it's fine. But now, fast forward 10 years, it's like you said, not if but when. So it's probably the biggest deal that I would say.
It is, because it's such a huge hit and expense, and you got to have your drains.
And what
it's
year?
Not something you got an option on.
Right. And what year did they do away with cast iron?
They've not done away with cast iron. Cast iron is still a prevalent product in the market. You will still find it in many commercial. A lot of the commercial buildings have gone back to it.
Really?
Yeah, because it's quieter. They're finding problems with PVC pipes. You hear the water running through the walls and everywhere else, so they don't like that. And the biggest problem they have are the horizontal and accessible sections.
Yeah.
The vertical sections they have no problems with. If it's horizontal and I've got access, it's not a problem.
But in homes, they kind of stopped in like 82, right?
They did. They did, because it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't practical.
Gotcha. Wow. Well,
that's a lot of great information.
Yeah, a lot of good information.
Took a lot of notes.
So, okay, Kelly, do you have Chris's information? Did you put it into the chat below? And if you're watching this on YouTube, Chris's information will be below. Do you have a website?
Yep, it's cniservices.net.
Now, can you talk about what might be coming next year in your world, or at least for you? Is it still too soon? But
I'm pushing right now to try to get myself from having to put my life at risk as often as I have been as far as walking on roofs, because I do try to walk on every roof, because I know from the ground I can't see it. Unfortunately, there are homes you just can't safely walk on.
Yeah.
It's too steep, it's too tall, it's metal, it's a tile that you can't walk on. So what I'm really working myself toward now is moving into doing some more drone work.
Yeah.
So I can do some drone roof inspections, so I can actually get on those roofs instead of saying I inspected it from the ground with binoculars, which I think is very lame, although I have no other option to write that down.
It's better than breaking a leg or falling off a roof. So.
It most certainly is, and believe me, I've pushed myself on roofs where I can assure you my wife would probably kill me if she knew what I was doing up there.
Yeah.
And with these drones and the 4K video and all of that, that's going to give you...
Yeah, I'm looking at this as a great opportunity to be able to give a better visual for owners, especially on some of the higher-end homes where, the people can't see them, they can't see the roof, they're concerned, to be able to video the entire roof and get down close to it so they can actually get a look, and if they've got concerns, they can send the video to their roofer.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
He doesn't even have to show up. He can just watch the video and look at the areas, the vulnerable areas that I'm going to point out in the video, and focus on those to try to clean up whatever's there.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to shooting for next year. It's kind of exciting.
All right, well, we're going to wrap it, but before we go, if you need to set an appointment with myself or Matt, go to austinrealestateagents.org. If you want to download our duplex e-buyer guide, go to austinduplexagent.com. Be sure to type the word agent in the remarks if you want to subscribe to future broadcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. I'm out of town next week. And then the next week, I have an interview with a business strategist that is going to tell our consumers, especially from the real estate space, how to strategize your business where you're working in it and not on it. That will be it for today. Chris, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us.
And we'll see you out in the field.
All righty.
See you guys in a couple weeks.
Yeah.